Have you ever looked at a clear plastic ornament and thought, this could be something really special? Well, today I'm turning one into an elegant Christmas keepsake featuring a delicate Helleborus flower made entirely from cardstock. I'll show you how to color the pieces with Copic markers, shape the flower into a realistic bloom, and finish it with a touch of snowy sparkle inside. Hey everyone, it's Colorado Lean. Welcome back to the craft room. For today's project, I am going to be using the Helleborus or the Christmas Rose die from Susan Tyranny Coburn. And I'm going to be cutting it from a scrap piece of 65-pound white Recollections cardstock. Now, the great thing about Susan's dies is embossed directly onto them, she tells you how many times each piece needs to be cut. So for the main flower center and the main petals, you will cut that one time each. For the small flower, you need to cut this 4 times, the leaves 2 times, and then another part of the flower center, you need to cut that 2 times. And to save some time in the video, I have already cut all of my pieces out. So let's get started with our coloring. To make this video go a little bit faster and not quite as boring, I am only going to be coloring one piece of everything for you, just to show you how I do it. So for my petals, I'm going to start with Copic marker RV66. This is raspberry. And I am just going to do some very simple long strokes. Now you can see that my pen does need to be refilled. I think most of my Copics need refilling by now. But that's okay. I am not going to change this to fill it in any. I'm going to leave it with that streaky look. And then I am also going to color in the back of the petal. Now I'm going to take the RV69, which is peony, and I am just going to go on the outside of my petal. Now, if it streaks in like it did here, that's okay. And then I am going to do the same thing for the 3 petals as well as the little petals. For my flower centers, I'm going to start with G20, which is wax white. And I am just going to color in the center of the stamens. And probably halfway up, give or take. And then I will add some color to the back of that as well. And then I'm going to come in with Y11, which is pale yellow, and just finish filling that in. And then again, I will just turn it over and add a little bit more color. And then for the very center of our flower, I'm just, again, going to use the Y11 and just color that in. And then for the leaves, I'm going to start with YG17, which is grass green. And again, I'm going to color the front and the back. And then on the front of the leaf, I'm going to come in with YG67, which is moss. And for this, I am just going to flick the color up. And then I will do that to my other 3 leaves, and I'll be right back with you. Now that all of our flower pieces are colored, let's go ahead and start shaping them. I am going to be using the Tool-in-One as well as the toolkit pieces from Susan's Garden. And we're going to start with the small loop tool. To shape the flower petals, I'm just going to go from the end of the petal towards the base. And I'm not pushing very hard at all. I am just softening the paper fibers and adding a little bit of shape and texture to the petals. Next, I am going to bring in the reverse tweezers. And I am just going to grab the petal like that and give it a little bit of a pinch. And then with the reverse tweezers, I am going to carefully roll the edge of the petals. And that might help if it's in focus. All right, and then I'm going to grab the next petal, give it a little pinch, and then carefully roll the edges. And then I'm going to take the medium ball stylus, and I'm just going to press in the center to give that a little bit of shape. So that's how we do the big petals. And then we're going to do the same. We're just going to use the small loop tool and go from the tip of the petal to the base. And then again with the reverse tweezers, we will go in, pinch the petal, and then give it a little twist. Now that all of my petals have been shaped, it's time to start working on our leaves. And I have brought out the leaf board. It is just kind of a heavy piece of chipboard, and that does come in the kit. On the back side of our leaf, we want to take the leaf tool, and we're just going to draw in the stem line. And then from the front, we're going to fold on that stem line. And now also from the front with our leaf tool, we're going to go to the stem line that we just created, and we are going to make our veins. Now we don't want to go over the top of that stem line if we can avoid it. And then again, we are going to bring in our reverse tweezers and grab it at the end of the stem. And then we're going to pinch up. And I will bring my foam pad in, as well as my medium ball stylus. And then I am just going to soften the edges on the back. And then give it a little bit of shape. Now, when Susan does her leaves, she uses some pan pastels to lightly go over the top of the stem line. And that is really pretty. Okay, and there are 2 of our leaves. I am still learning the best way to shape the leaves, so I will link down in the description Susan's video for the Helleborus flower, and then you can learn from the master. All right, the last thing we need to do is work on our stamen. And with a pair of really thin scissors, we are just going to cut each one of these in half. Now you don't have to go all the way down. You can vary it from just a little bit to a little bit farther. Now, if you accidentally cut too close and you end up losing half of one, that is just fine. I have done that more times than I care to count. Now that these have been cut, I am going to bring in some of Susan's pollen, and I'm going to use the Sunflower Symphony. So I'm just going to open that up and set that aside. For my glue today, I am going to be using the Barely Art Precision Craft Glue. And I am going to put a puddle out onto my craft mat. Now I am a little more steady with my Singer sewing machine tweezers, so I'm just going to use these. And all I'm going to do is dip the ends of the stamen into the glue. And then into the pollen so that it looks like that. And then we're just going to go all the way around. And before we put our pollen away, let's go ahead and work on the rest of our flower center. So we're just going to take this piece here, and with our reverse tweezers, we're going to grab this little tail, and then we can put a line of glue on the base. And then we are just going to wrap that up. And then we will pull it off the tweezers. And then we just want to kind of open this up a little bit. And separate the pieces. And then we can, I'm going to try and grab it with those tweezers. And then put some pollen on the end of that as well. Let's go ahead and set the flower centers aside for just a little bit and let them dry some more. I am going to bring in an old mouse pad to make my flowers on. Now I have taken the medium ball stylist and I have just pressed in the center of the large petals as well as all of the small petals. And we're going to glue the 3 petals to the 2 petals. We want to make sure that our 2 petals form a V. So they go up rather than going down. So the 2 petals will go like that. And then we will have the single petal going up. And then the 2 bottom petals going down. So I'm going to put some Barely Art glue on that petal. And this is always a little tricky for me. I tend to fumble sometimes. So I'm going to hold that in place and then bring in my stylist. And then for our small petals, we are just going to layer them in the center. I think I'll bring in the small ball stylist to help me with that. So I'm just going to hold it for a moment before I put my next layer on. And I want to offset my petals. And sometimes for me, it's easier to turn the base flower rather than just trying to change how I hold the smaller petals or the next layer. And now for the flower centers, I am going to just press those a little bit, add some glue to the base, and put that into my flower. And then again, I want to try and offset these a little bit. And add them in the center. And then the very last piece, oops. I am just going to put some glue in the center of the flower. And then figure out how to hold that. And then put that in the center. And there is our finished flower. For my ornament today, I am using a disc style plastic ornament. I purchased this in a container of 25 from Michael's. I don't remember how many years ago that was, but at the time they were $19.99 for 25 of them. Now these are 3.5, 3.25 of an inch across from side to side. So it's a really good size ornament. I have used this for a few other Christmas ornament projects. Now you could very easily leave it like this as clear, or you could fill it with something, glitter, paint, what have you. I decided to use some of this iridescent fake snow. Now, I at first thought that static electricity would hold it to the sides of the ornament, and in some instances it has, only not quite as much as I would like for this particular project. So what I did was I ran back to 2012 me and I grabbed my Pledge Floor Care with Future Shine, and I used this for the adhesive for my ornaments. Now I know that sounds kind of weird. That's what I thought as well. Back in 2012 when I bought this, I used it to upcycle some older glass ornament bulbs, and this stuff works like a charm. Now, I'm not going to actually do that on screen with you right now because it's way too much of a mess, and I did do it last night. So I have a little egg carton here, and as you can see, it holds these ornaments very nicely. What I did, I put some of the Pledge inside of the ornament, and then I moved it around to coat the entire inside. I then drained it into my next ornament and turned the first ornament upside down to drain a little bit. And then after it drained, I made myself a little paper funnel and just fit that in there. Spooned in some of my iridescent snow, and then I just covered it with my thumb and shook it up to coat the inside of my ornament. Now, the only problem I really have with these plastic ornaments are these ornament caps. They might as well be made out of tin foil. They are just that delicate. So to get this back into my ornament, I like to squeeze it closed and just slide the topper down. And then I'm just able to get that back in without bending these. The very first thing I want to make sure I do is clean this ornament with some isopropyl alcohol. I want to get all of the oil and dirt and anything off the front of this ornament. To adhere our flower to our ornament, I am going to be using some acid-free Yes paste. This is the adhesive that Susan suggested for another ornament that she did like this. And this is the smallest size you can get. So there's that. Now, like I said, I've had this for a very, 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 very long time. And I honestly don't remember opening it after I got it. But this is a very thick paste. And at first I thought, oh, I've had it too long. Apparently I already opened it and now it's ruined. But that is not the case. So it is still pliable. It is still very usable. The instructions say that you can thin this down with a little bit of water. And I have seen some other YouTube videos where they use this for a paper project. And they say that if you put too much water in it, then your paper will wrinkle. So I am going to get out a glob and just put it on a scrap piece of paper there. And then I am going to just prop that up a little bit. So I am going to place this probably right about there. Now, the first time I did this, that's when I thought that the adhesive was completely dry. So I touched it with my finger, and I was actually able to get some of the paste on my finger, and I thought, oh, fantastic, it's going to work. So that's all I used on the back of my ornament. And the next day, each piece just flicked right off. So I am going to put quite a bit of paste on the back of this ornament. And then I am going to place it where I want it. Now, it is recommended to let this dry for 24 hours. And especially if you're using a lot like I am. So I have a good amount of paste on here. If I can get that in focus, and you can kind of see how much I have glommed on there. And then I am just going to try and remember how reverse tweezers work. And put that first leaf in there. And then I'm going to take my second leaf. And slide it into place there. And then I will tuck my little leaf in there. Now I have an extra leaf left over, and I could add it in here, but I don't think I am. I think I'm just going to have 3 leaves. So I'm just going to have the 2 big ones and then the small one. And then it looks like that. That is really pretty. I really love how this looks. So now I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to put it in my little cupcake cup here and set it aside to dry. I have a little bit of paste left over on my paper here, and I can just put this back in. And then tighten that down. And now I am going to go wash off my spatula so it doesn't dry on there. Before we wrap up, I wanted to show you all of the finished ornaments together. Of course, this is the Helleborus that we made today. I also made another one using a different color palette, And I could not resist making one with a flower I designed and cut on my Cricut. I think it's amazing how each one has its own personality, even though they're all created using the same basic idea. If you'd like a closer look at these finished ornaments, be sure to check out the corresponding blog post. I've included close-up photos along with a complete list of the supplies I used. I really love how elegant these ornaments turned out. One of my favorite things about this project is how easy it is to customize. Whether you use a Helleborus like I did, another layer flower, or even a flower you design yourself, you can create an ornament that is completely unique. Now, these ornaments also make wonderful handmade gifts or keepsakes for family and friends. So now is the perfect time to get a head start before the holiday rush. I would love to know, if you were making one of these ornaments, what flower would you choose? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for spending some creative time with me today. If you enjoyed this tutorial, I'd love it if you gave the video a thumbs up. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next tutorial. I'll see you soon.